This is an Introduction to English Grammar Part 8, Verbs and Verb Phrases. My name is Karen and this is for a course given at the University of Utah. Today, in this presentation, we'll be talking about main verbs, helping verbs, and linking verbs. I have for you a paragraph that has some incorrect grammar, and I want you to listen to it and see if you can tell what's wrong. George Crumb, a Native American chef, invented potato chips in 1853. A customer returned an order of fries with a note that they was too thick. Crumb decided to make super thin fries to get even. The customer loved the thin fries, and since then they become a favorite snack. When you hear that, you might think, boy, there's something wrong with that. This one has several verb tense errors, and the verb tense errors make us feel like there's something wrong with the paragraph. A verb is one of the basic parts of speech. They're usually said to express action. However, that definition has some problematic things with it. One problem is that some other types of words can express action or seem to talk about action. And second, verbs don't always seem to have action. Verbs that aren't actions. We've already seen that the verb to be isn't really an action. We talked about it as a linking verb when we talked about nouns. Linking verbs are verbs that connect a subject with its complement. Other linking verbs include seem, become, look, appear, smell, taste, sound, and feel. A linking verb can usually be replaced by the verb to be, and it doesn't change the meaning. If it doesn't make sense, then the word is probably not a linking verb. Here's an example. The pizza tastes delicious, or the pizza is delicious. The second one, Pat tasted the pizza. Pat is pizza. That doesn't seem to quite work out. I also sometimes use an equal sign instead of a linking verb is to test for linking verbs. Okay, so here are some verbs where I want you to try to create them as both linking verbs and verbs using action. So remember that a linking verb is one that just connects the subject with its complement. An action is one where someone would be doing the action. Go ahead and pause the video now to complete this activity. The relationship between verbs and nouns. One way of creating new verbs is to make them from nouns. English has a tendency over the years to create verbs out of nouns. Market and audition are two such examples. Can eyeball be a verb? Something like, she was eyeballing me? In my mental grammar, I say yes, that can be a verb. Another famous example that we use all the time right now is the word friend. Used to just be a noun. Now we can say something like, she friended me, and that can be a verb as well. Our book mentions three types of verbs: main verbs, auxiliary verbs, and modal verbs. Auxiliary verbs and modal verbs are called helping verbs. Okay, so look at these examples here. Jerry is watching television. Joan has seen 4 shooting stars in her lifetime. We were watching television when she came. Bill has been looking at that painting for 3 hours. Sandra was told to go home. These are all examples of auxiliary verbs. Okay, is, has, were, has been, and was. Okay, what about these? What kind of verbs are these? I love chocolate. Jerry is watching television. Joan has seen 4 shooting stars in her lifetime. And Bill has been looking at that painting for 3 hours. These are all examples of main verbs. A main verb, here are a couple of other examples. Bill studies anthropology. By May 5th, you will have taken 3 tests in this class. It's responsible for the main action of the sentence. It can occur alone, or it can occur with one or more helping verbs. Give the main verbal meaning to the sentence. So when we're looking at the verb, you will have taken, so the verb is will have taken. Taken gives us the main meaning to the sentence. Helping verbs, the auxiliary and modal verbs, we often consider to be helping because they help give meaning to the sentence. Okay, modals, we have will, would, shall, should, can, could, may, might, must. And in my dialect of English, we also have ought to, had better, and used to. Some of you may not share that particular dialect of English. Auxiliary verbs are be, do, and have. Okay. Can auxiliary verbs also appear as main verbs? That's one of our questions that we have to answer. So here are some examples of have, do, and be as auxiliary verbs. Okay, she has seen this movie twice this week. He had visited Berlin before he came to Vienna. So here are several examples of these appearing as helpers. Okay, so aside from being helping verbs, can they also be a main verb? Can we come up with any examples of those as a main verb? Let's see. I could say, I have many friends. Yep, have there is the only verb, and so that can also be a main verb. Main verbs can appear as intransitive, transitive, and linking. Remember, we've already talked about linking verbs. Intransitive verbs are verbs that can have but don't need some sort of object to come after the verb. So I can say, I sleep. I can also say, I sleep until noon. Both are correct. Transitive verbs, though, require a following noun phrase, so some sort of object phrase. He surprised us. We couldn't just say, he surprised. Okay, or Robert pulled. If we say Robert pulled, there tends to be more action than when we say something like, or there tends to be, more action when it seems intransitive than if we do it as a transitive verb. Robert pulled the car out of the mud. And so sometimes verbs can appear as both. Okay, linking verbs, you look surprised, she is a pilot. Some verbs in English can be both transitive and intransitive. Okay, look at these sentences. The door opened, or he opened the door. One of those is transitive and one is intransitive. Can you tell which? Okay, the second one, the car moved and she moved the car. Remember that an intransitive is one where the verb can finish the sentence and stand alone. No other words can have to come after it. As in the examples of the door opened and the car moved. Okay. In the examples, he opened the door and she moved the car, we have an example of where it's acting as a transitive verb. Okay, go ahead and take a look at these sentences and decide whether the main verb is transitive, intransitive, or linking. So what we've learned in this presentation is that main verbs are responsible for the main action. They can be alone or they can appear with helping verbs. Intransitive verbs can stand alone. Transitive verbs must have an object. Linking verbs link a subject and its complement.